Black Shuck. And a dreadful thing from the cliff did spring, and its wild bark thrilled around. His eyes had the glow of the fires below. 'Twas the form of the spectre hound. An old Norfolk saying. That howl has haunted us for 3 nights in a row, and each time it fills us with dread and painful memories. It's a death knell for some unfortunate creature, even if it isn't always an immediate end, but it is always a bloody one. Last night was the end of Mr. Brown's existence. To be honest, he won't be mourned. He was a notorious drunk, and nobody liked him. He reeked of whiskey and never paid his bar tab. He was always trying to beg a drink from others in the pub, unsuccessfully I might add. Mr. Brown's throat was ripped out. He'd come across Black Shuck a year ago while stumbling around on the moor. He survived that encounter, but last night was his last call. The black bitch collected her dues. None of us can understand why he stumbled out onto the moor last night, when he knew that she was out there, waiting for him. He knew that he'd had his year, that he'd had more time than others after seeing Black Shuck. Yet he still went out into the mist in a drunken stupor. We live in a strange little village on the Norfolk coast. Our family has been here since the 1100s, or at least that's what Grandpa always claimed. That damn demon dog has probably been here even longer, perhaps since the Vikings invaded, and every year the hellhound claims another victim or two. Somewhere along the line some smart ass decided to name the bitch Black Shuck. The name stuck. I say bitch because, well, I've just always thought of it as being of the female persuasion. Others, including dear old Dad, refer to it as a him, because males are just so much more fearsome. I say pish to all that. The female of the species is more dangerous than the rest. Plus I just like calling it a bitch. Anyway, some of the menfolk, after getting drunk in the pub, have decided to get all brave, grab their torches and pitchforks and hunt the bitch down. They've forgotten their history. Our ancestors, over the centuries, have all tried to put an end to her stalking anyone dumb enough to wander out onto the moor after dark, when the mist comes up at this time of year, and all of those attempts have ended in tragic failure, and not to mention many a death. Some of those deaths have been at Black Shuck's paws and fangs, while others have just been due to drunken stupidity and getting caught in a mire. As I watch my husband Thomas, my brother Richard, and my father drink their whiskey, pat each other on their backs, and get each other hyped up to go hunting for a phantom dog, I want to slap them senseless. One of the other women in the village waves her husband a teary goodbye, like so many other women of the village have done over the centuries. But instead of giving my husband the tearful farewell he wants, I tell him he's an idiot. He downs the last bit of his whiskey, gives me a wet kiss on the cheek, and follows the rest of the men out of the pub and into the mist. A hush descends over the pub as wives and mothers wait. I stand sentinel at the window, waiting for the first of the screams that will puncture the silence like it did the night my mother was killed by Black Shuck 20 years ago. My parents had argued that night, and my mother stormed out and ran into the night and the mist. My brother and I sat by the window waiting for her to come home, but all we heard were her screams. And tonight is the anniversary of her death. Ever since that night, I've hated waiting. Some would say that in many ways, I'm still waiting for her to come home. I've never been a particularly patient person, probably due to my abandonment issues. Thomas likes to tell me that I have those in spades. He's an armchair psychologist who likes to analyze me. I'm just more of a doer. If I sit still for too long, I start to think things I really don't want to be thinking about. Going out there is tantamount to committing suicide, but waiting for the screams is driving me crazy. I can't simply wait here and do nothing. I grab my coat and flashlight and run out into the mist like a crazy woman because that's exactly what I am. I know I'm being just as stupid as my mother was all those years ago, but I can't help myself. Before she died, my mother said we had more guts than brains, and that would put us both in an early grave. But it was her own actions that put her in the ground, not mine. Torches flicker in the mist, and I can hear voices as they head towards the moor. Thomas's voice drifts on the cold breeze. The sound of his drunken laughter forms a cast-iron ball in my stomach. I want to shout at him and tell him that he's a bloody fool, but the words freeze in my throat. I'm trying not to panic. Before my mother died, I was what some might have called a rational skeptic, But I gave up being rational about Black Shuck the moment the bitch took my mother. Now the rest of my family are dangling themselves at her gaping jaw, which is wide open and ready to snap shut around their necks, her fangs waiting to rip out their throats. The church bells clang through the mist, courtesy of Father Michael, who rings them for the brave fools heading to their death. The church was built on a ley line, on the edge of the moor, on top of the cliff overlooking the beach. Father Michael has been the priest here since before I was born. It's not the first time he's rung the bell on a night like this for the men of the village hunting for Black Shuck. He believes they're doing God's work and encourages them every year to go on the hunt, just another reason I won't set foot in his church. He's clearly insane and has no respect for human life or any common sense for that matter. I can feel the surface of the ground change beneath my feet. I'm no longer on the solid tar surface of the road, and the ringing of the bells sounds closer. The smell of the ocean is stronger and the air seems to have a colder bite. I'm on the moor and in Black Shuck's territory. Mist swirls around my ankles and up my boots. My hair, damp from the fog, clings to my face. As I try to wipe the strands of hair off my cheeks, I realize that they're wet, not from my hair or the mist, but from the tears I'm shedding. I'm crying and didn't even realize it. Bloody ridiculous. The shouts from the men seem nearer. I'm catching up to them. I hear Thomas talking to Richard. He's telling some dirty joke and Richard laughs uncomfortably. He's never been very comfortable with bawdy jokes, probably because he isn't comfortable with his own sexuality. I just wish he'd come out of the closet and admit who he truly is. Life would be so much easier if he were just honest about it. However, Dad would probably not take it well. If our mother had been alive, she would know how to handle the situation. A scream erupts out of the dark. It seems to echo and reverberate. I don't think it's Thomas or Richard, but I can feel that ball in my stomach grow and tighten. I run in the direction I believe it's coming from, but the sound is muffled and I'm disorientated. I trip over a rock. Richard is shouting. Torches flicker through the mist, converging from different directions to where the scream came from. The metallic smell of blood hangs in the damp air. An involuntary shiver creeps up my arms and legs as I approach the huddled group of men. The look on Thomas's face makes me want to escape, but I keep walking towards the huddled group of men with their sympathetic, pitying looks. "Don't look," Thomas says as he tries to shield me. I push past him. I know what I'll see before I see it. That cast iron ball shoots from my stomach up to my throat and my jaw clenches. My face is hot and cold at the same time. Shock settles into my bones. My father has joined my mother. His throat has been ripped out. Blood seeps into the ground, turning it red. Richard's arms are around me, squeezing me, strangling me. I wait for the tears to stream down my face again, but I have no more tears to cry. I'm numb. I watch from a distance as Thomas and Richard pick up his body. The men of the village have lost their will to hunt down the black bitch. With slumped shoulders, they follow the corpse and its bloody trail back to the pub and their wives and mothers. They'll probably sip their beers and huddle by the fire and tell tall stories about my father's life, stories I've heard so many times before. It's the same way the hunt has always ended, with blood and tears and stories of the fallen. I can't seem to move my feet. I stand there, staring down at the puddle of my father's blood. Richard and Thomas keep walking towards the village with my father's corpse dangling between them, and don't notice that I'm not with them. Their voices and torches fade away. I'm alone with my grief. Or at least that's what I think until I hear the sound of paws padding on the ground and a snarl. There's a gathering darkness at the periphery of my vision. Red blazing eyes stare back at me as the amassing darkness takes the form of a huge dog. My legs shake and my lower lip quivers as my heart beats its staccato against my ribcage. Even though my legs feel like unset jelly, I take a step away from the bitch and then another one. She matches me step for step, slowly advancing as I retreat. We're dancing a slow death waltz. My father's blood drips from her snout. A scream freezes in my throat. I want to run, but if I do, I'll die that much sooner. I want to hold on to life for just a few moments more. "Sandy," Thomas shouts from somewhere towards the village. "Sandy, where are you?" He calls again. His voice gets a higher pitch as he starts to worry about me. My voice catches in my throat and I can't call back. I take a step towards the sound of his voice and perceived safety. Black Shuck matches my step with a counter-move of her own. She gets between me and Thomas's voice. "Fucking bitch," I scream. All those years of pent-up anger, fear and frustration have finally been vocalized in those two words, and with those words resounding in my brain, I run towards her. My anger has pushed all my fears aside. She growls. Her red eyes flash in the darkness, giving me a target. Blood pumps through my jelly legs. Her hackles rise as she prepares to take a flying leap at me. Her fangs, still dripping from my father's blood, are bared. Her growl sends a primal fear up my spine, but my anger once again pushes that fear aside. We collide. Stones smash against my ribs. Her paws pin my shoulders to the ground. Rotten breath caresses my throat. Her tongue licks my neck as I struggle under her. "Sandy!" Thomas and Richard call out to me from the mist. They're so close. She stops licking my throat and sniffs the air. With one last growl, she jumps off me and is swallowed up by the night. Richard and Thomas find me cuddling my knees to my chest and rocking back and forth. I can't tell them what has happened to me, that she's marked me. She knows my scent now and will come for me, not tonight but soon. Tonight I must mourn my father and be grateful for my reprieve and the time I still have left with my family. She howls somewhere in the dark as I walk back to the village pub. She's reminding me that it's not over, that it'll never be over, that even once she's claimed me, she will still be roaming free to hunt others dumb enough to go looking for her, and let's face it, there's an endless supply of those in this world. Black Shuck will never go hungry.